Welcome to Red Flags and Real Love, hosted by Virginia McConnell, dating and relationship pattern coach, specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery and someone who has lived everything she teaches. This show is about recognizing the patterns that keep us stuck, leaving what's hurting us, and rebuilding into something real. Here's your host, Virginia McConnell.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Red Flags and Real Love. Today we're going to talk about, was that narcissistic abuse? Okay, so I want to start with something that might be hard to hear. Most people in a narcissistic relationship have no idea they're even in one. And we're not talking about some people, not people who aren't paying attention. Most people, smart people, like self-aware people who would tell you without hesitation that they never tolerate being mistreated. That's what makes narcissistic abuse so different from what most of us picture when we hear the word abuse. There's rarely a single moment you can point to. Okay, there's no dramatic scene. There's no obvious villain. Instead, it's 1,000 small moments. A comment here, a silence there, and a promise that quietly gets broken. So that individually seems so small and like almost too small to notice. But when you add them all together slowly, it actually rewrites what feels normal to you. You can be standing right in the middle of it and have absolutely no idea. And it's not because you're not paying attention. It's because it's specifically built to be invisible from the inside. So today I want to change that. I want to give you real framework, not just for what narcissistic abuse looks like, but for why it's so easy to miss entirely, even when it's happening to you right now. And even more importantly, to your loved ones, because I think, that's also where it gets missed very heavily when you have a loved one that's going through this and you would not even know, you would not even see the signs. Okay. So for me, this didn't start in a marriage. It didn't start in a relationship. It started long before I even had the words narcissistic abuse to even reach for. Okay, so my mother lived with some serious mental illnesses. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, manic depression, and what looked like in hindsight, most likely undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. And along all of that, she had extreme high narcissistic tendencies. So, and saying that, I want to be very careful here because mental illness on its own doesn't cause narcissistic abuse at all. So plenty of people carry those same diagnoses and are very loving, very safe, present parents and individuals. But in my house growing up, those narcissistic tendencies showed up in patterns I can name clearly now. So a lot of gaslighting, walking on eggshells, the sense that love was unpredictable and had to be managed carefully to stay safe. It was very conditional. And I didn't have language for any of it as a kid. And I knew that home didn't always feel safe, that I learned very early how to read a room, like even before I understood why I needed to. And that I became someone who always braced for what might happen next, even if nothing was going to happen, even if nothing ever happened. I always was bracing for what might happen. And that's the part that I really want to be honest about today. This didn't start with some light bulb moment for me as an adult. It started at the very beginning, before I had any way to know that what I was experiencing had a name, right? So like or it wasn't simply that love was supposed to feel like that. Like, it was very unclear for me, right? So, and that's exactly why I do what I do now, like the work that I'm doing now, because so many people are still standing exactly where I was. So inside something they've never had language for, because it's the only thing they've ever known. And so next, I really want to talk about what narcissistic abuse actually is. Okay. And just as importantly, what makes it different from a difficult relationship or partner who's simply bad at communication, right? So this is really hard moving forward from being in a toxic, abusive relationship and moving into more healthy relationships in that dynamic where you don't have, narcissistic partners or things of that nature that are really toxic, but that partner, might not be the best at communication, or a more standard, a more standard issue that you might encounter together, instead of something more malicious. So I really want to show and talk about the core distinction between the two. And that's really intent. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it matters. Abuse is abuse. Like, no matter what form it takes, physical, sexual, financial, emotional, psychological, all of it is real. Okay. All of it is damaging. None of it needs to be ranked against the other to count. Okay. It's all just not good. Right. So what makes it narcissistic abuse specifically is the intent behind it. So it's not the severity. It's not the category, it's the intent. Okay. So narcissistic abuse isn't someone having a bad day or someone who's going through something difficult and just snaps. It's harm that's used, and often repeatedly, often patterned, as a tool. So this tool is used to control, and a tool to keep you off balance, a tool to maintain power in the relationship. And that distinction really matters because it changes how you interpret what happened to you. Okay, so that, like, oh, well, they didn't mean it, stops being an explanation that you can hide behind, because the pattern itself reveals the intent, right? Okay, and then, so we'll talk a little bit more about recognizable patterns. So something, a little more common. There are specific, like, well-documented patterns that show up again and again, specifically in narcissistic relationships. And this is really great because, if we can identify these, then we can really get a grasp into what we're dealing with. So I want to walk through the ones I see most often in my work. And the first one is love bombing, and it's followed immediately by devaluation. So it usually starts like really intensely overwhelming attention, right? So it could be in the form of gifts, declarations of love that feel almost too good to be true, right? Like, I love you, you're my soulmate, like, giving you gifts immediately, like really expensive gifts, texting you constantly. So showing you a lot of attention. And in hindsight, they usually were too good to be true. That intensity is rarely sustainable and rarely meant to be. It's often followed by a shift. So followed by all that intense love bombing, we'll get a shift of criticism or withdraw, or a sense that you can't quite get back to how things felt at the beginning. So no matter what you do. And then another recognizable pattern is gaslighting. So this one is the most damaging pattern because it doesn't hurt just you. It makes you doubt your own perception of reality and being told that things didn't happen the way you remember. Okay, so being told you're too sensitive or remembering it wrong. And gosh, yeah, this one is really nasty. Research also confirms this is not rare, which is just so sad. Gaslighting shows up in the majority of documented domestic abuse cases. So this is a really, really big one. So if you can learn the signs of gaslighting, then you can really get an idea, if you're dealing with that in a relationship. So another pattern that's very common is triangulation and isolation. So bringing other people into the dynamic. It could be an ex, a coworker, a family member. And this is to create competition or jealousy. So you slowly start pulling you away from your friends and your family who might otherwise notice what's happening and say something. So they might be told a different story behind your back and you don't know this, right? And so, I mean, you just have no clue what's going on because they are bringing that person into the dynamic and have no clue, right? So another recognizable pattern is the silent treatment as control. So not silence because someone needs space to process. So there's a big difference. I want to be very clear on that. If someone needs space to process, you should definitely throw that out there. Like, hey, I need, a little space, a little time to think about this and process it. Give me a day, give me 20 minutes, whatever it is that you might need, but this is different. So this is when silence is used deliberately as a punishment until you apologize for something that you may not even have done or might not even have been your fault. Which is absolutely insane, which makes you feel even more crazy, right? So the next pattern that I see a lot, the last one I'm going to kind of touch on, is little to no remorse. And this, oh man, when harm happens, there's rarely a real moment to take accountability for it. They do not take a moment where they sit with what they did and let it change them, right? So the apology, if it comes at all, like if you end up getting an apology, and if it does come, is often more about ending your distress than acknowledging their impact. So they just want it to go away. They just want the drama to stop. Like the apology is not to acknowledge how it hurt you or how their action impacted you. It is not at all. It is solely about them. Okay. And so the next part that I want to talk about is why it's so hard to name this in real time. Like when it's happening to you, here's what I want you to understand. You're not slow to recognize this because you're not perceptive. You're not slow to recognize it because it's specifically designed to be hard to see from the inside. Like they make it that way. They design it that way. The gaslighting doesn't just make you doubt individual moments. It makes you doubt your own judgment as a witness to your own life. So crazy, crazy town, man. I mean, And once that happens, you stop trusting the very instrument you need to use to recognize what's happening, right? So you stop trusting yourself. And this is why external perspective matters so much. Why talking to a friend, a coach, a therapist, counselor, someone outside the dynamic can be the thing that finally makes it visible. Because you might not be seeing the same things that they're seeing from an outside perspective, and not because you're incapable of seeing it, but because you've been systemically trained not to trust what you've seen. And that's what makes this so malicious, right? So if you've been asking yourself, was that narcissistic abuse? I want you to leave with this, okay? You don't need a perfect checklist match. Like, you don't need a whole list of things to trust what you experience. You don't need their admission. You don't need everyone else to agree with your account of what happened. Like, you don't need to run it by people, okay? The confusion you felt isn't evidence that you're overreacting. And it's often evidence of exactly how effective the pattern was. So the more confused that you felt is more evidence of how effective that pattern was, okay? And naming what happened to you isn't about assigning a label for the sake of having one, okay? Like labels, whatever. It's about finally being able to stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking what's actually happened, so you can begin the real work of healing from it. So if today's episode resonated with you, I built a course specifically for this moment. It's called Was That Narcissistic Abuse? And it walks you through exactly what we talked about today in more depth, with real tools for validating your own experience and understanding what comes next. And you can find it at breakthepatterns.net. If you're not sure that's the right step for you, come to my free class on Monday. I do a free class that's live. It's free every Monday at 7:30 Eastern. And I would absolutely love to see you there. So again, thank you so much for being here. I will see you on the next episode.
That's it for this episode of Red Flags and Real Love. If anything Virginia talked about today resonated with you, visit breakthepatterns.net and join the free class every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's free, it's live, and it's the best place to start. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick rating wherever you're listening. It takes 30 seconds, and it genuinely helps the show reach more people who need it. See you then.